Alright. Hi everyone, this is audapostrophe, and let's continue our game of Hermitage Strange Case Files on Nintendo Switch. Alright, we just got done battling a demon last time we left off, so let's see what the aftermath of that is. Really? Well, never mind. There's nothing you can do about it now, so come back here. Who's that on the phone? It's Neko. Justin left a message and then ran off. I was worried, so I sent her to the scene to confirm the situation. And how is it? It's pretty awful, but we were also lucky. There seems to have been quite a lot of people involved. So far, there's no official investigation, since the place was such a mess that they don't know what they are dealing with yet. Neko also said that the police moved several unconscious people off the rooftop. She didn't recognize any of their faces, though. So you mean that thing fell to its death? Can you imagine? A messenger of the gods losing against gravity? How humiliating. On the other hand, there was only one body at the scene. Yes, Neko even strolled around the block to make absolutely sure. The rooftop must look as if a typhoon passed through, but thankfully the debris didn't reach the ground. She found some bloodstains, indicating that a struggle took place, but there was no sign of anyone else. And even if there had been, the heavy rain earlier in the morning would have probably washed it all away. God forbid. Then again, you were really willing to send Neko on errands when it's storming like that? It wasn't me. She's really anxious to find Justin. Oh, I see. Sounds like there's a story there. Those two get along better than they let on. Anyway, with everything being as messy as it is, I'm afraid she made the trip there for nothing. I highly doubt that the monster just went crazy in the middle of the night and fell to its death all by itself. According to Neko, there's a lack of blood, although there must have been several people on the scene of the struggle. So, still, if there's any other clues, you think somebody already cleaned up the aftermath? Justin isn't the only one who's missing. Hildy is nowhere to be found either. Something must have happened. Neko found plenty of small traces in the wreckage, so not everything's been cleaned up yet. Whatever happened, it sounds like there's not really anyone left to arrest and convict. Right now, our priority is to find Justin. If someone's been cleaning up the traces, I wouldn't want him caught in the crossfire. I just hope he's alright. As long as we don't know where he is or what happened, that's beyond our control. Right, so what are you thinking? I'll go and meet up with Neko, and then meet with you again later. Be careful out there, okay? Crap, his phone isn't working either. What the hell happened to him? If the man is indeed a competent and resourceful detective, he'd be clever enough to have his phone turned off while conducting fieldwork. I just need clarity. If you knew about the conversation we had in the store earlier, the only thing we can do right now is wait for the detective to return safely. What's the reason for this visit? You're not here to wait for him with me, are you? With me, I assume. You made it rather difficult for me to answer. As a matter of courtesy, I did in fact want to do the exact thing which you prematurely denied just now. You're acting as if you're close to him. He shrugged his shoulders, silently proving my point with his expression. Very well, then let's get a matter of business out of the way first. I'd like you to hold on to this for me. This is... He's holding a small brass bell. A real treasure, but of course, that would be an accurate description of all the things I deliver to you. Not to sound skeptical, but after all of those old books, this is... I take it out of his hands. It's surprisingly light. I'm assuming that means light, as though it isn't made of metal at all. As a matter of fact, it feels completely weightless. What an odd feeling. I pride myself in being quite knowledgeable in the field of archaeology, but I've never seen anything like this. I don't recognize the symbols on it. What era is it from? Maybe it's simply from an era you couldn't understand. Saying with such certainty that a researcher can't possibly know anything about it, it just makes your intentions that much more suspicious. Quite possibly, my behavior may not be considered normal to other people, and that much is true. He dusts off his collar and throws a glance out of the door. I acquired this particular little bell from a group of very bad people in a very bad place. Now, I have to ensure it's in a safe place, otherwise the crisis will only reach even bigger dimensions. You're sure putting a lot of faith in me. This place has been pretty crowded lately, so I'm worried your trust might be a little misplaced. Don't worry, it doesn't even concern your abilities. I just need to get this off my back, and once I'm out of here, there's no reason for them to come after me. Sounds like you've chosen the perfect moment to drop by and cause me trouble yet again. Well, At least this is an opportunity for the two of us to have a little chat. I wave a hand dismissively, taking a piece of cloth to wrap the bell in before shoving it into a drawer. You want to talk about things here? All your expression shows me is that you, as always, know way more than you're actually telling me. Well, truth be told, you asked me for a lot of information a couple of days ago, and I have my ways of gathering all sorts of gossip throughout the city. If you already know what's going on, why keep this up? Just to make me look like a fool? The detective you're involved with is an important piece of this now, and I need to know if this current incident has anything to do with the old friends I'm dealing with. It's as simple as that. I'm afraid you won't get any useful clues out of me. Even though the dust has settled, more details are still obscured. Is that so? That's a shame. Does the name Gargoyle ring a bell? A godly servant? I have heard tell of it, yes, though I've never had any interest in its alleged powers. You can never possess enough knowledge, especially when you may be dealing with some of the larger religious cults. Any additional information about them may prove useful. Have you ever been confronted with this creature? I wouldn't exactly call it a confrontation, no, but as soon as you've seen as much as a glimpse of it, it becomes fairly easy to imagine the extent of the carnage that could arise when it becomes agitated. In that case, you understand it better than I do, at least. What could have happened to make it fall like that? It would be impossible to ride on its back and force it to come crashing down from high up in the sky, right? Well, even if there were a brave man who dared to do so, he would not have left the scene unharmed. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody to go through such an ordeal. Naturally, I am unsure about the exact consequences, but logically speaking, the outcome could not be a positive one. The servant who carries out the great god's wishes proudly travels among the stars, his loyalty forever unwavering. Each time he spreads his wings, he straddles 300 suns and moons, the god's messenger, the god's carriage, the god's limbs, and the palms, the god's great will, / color. An otherworldly creature for whom the distance between planets is just a tiny step, falling to its death on a planet as measly as ours. Mankind has also managed to defy nature by creating steel wings to fly, but that won't stop such a creation from coming crashing to the ground in an unfortunate incident, would it? So basically a kind of plane crash? That would be strangely funny. Everything has its flaws, and since the creature's birth was already flawed, I assume it itself doesn't know where its limits lie. The length those people went to only for this god servant to die like that. I can't imagine the looks on their faces right now. Either way, the loss is irreparable. However, sooner or later, the old woman's disappearance will attract the attention of the police, and if it were me, I'd highly advise against getting involved in the long, messy investigation. I just hope this wave of chaos doesn't send ripples throughout the city. Morale is already low, what with the recent fatalities, and things like that can drag people down pretty quickly. My opinion about that is rather different. What? You don't think it's bad enough around here already? Confusion is but the surface. Opportunity lies underneath. You know, throughout history, people who said such things were often nutcases, outlaws, tyrants. Nothing good ever came from that point of view. I just wish the city itself were more involved. Then the dirty sand and rubble would rise up once again. A breath of fresh air and opportunity. And let me guess, you'll be there to take advantage of it somehow. Maybe your intentions aren't all bad, but I think your attitude will hurt the innocent citizens of the city, as it has these last 2 days. Chaos is merely the symptom. Treatment is not always comfortable or easy, yet I wager that most people would rather suffer through fear and pain than die. If even more events of this magnitude take place, you know damn well that your words alone won't be of much help. Rest assured, after living this long, the only thing I'm good at is using fear to do good. That's a classic villain speech again. Unfortunately, this incident had little to do with the actual target we are pursuing. It sounds rather ominous, beginning to wonder if there's a force that's wriggling around in places we can't see, stirring up all sorts of trouble. If you want proof of your suspicions, I'm afraid you'll have to... Okay, don't need to try so hard to give me hints. I've realized by now that you won't stop speaking in riddles. Justin's on our side, and I have a feeling he'll be a great help in our future investigations. You seemed quite worried about his well-being just a moment ago. I still am, but I chose to believe in him. He throws a puzzled look at me. He looks confused, but I'm sure he understands what I mean. I pick up the files Justin left on the table and remove some of the dust that inadvertently fell on them. Just a minute. After all, he's a proper detective now. Ah. Well, if it isn't Neko, how did you find... Don't move. You're still bleeding. No biggie. It's been properly stitched up and bandaged. Although the disinfectant still burns. You won't hold the store manager responsible for this, will you? Of course not. He has nothing to do with this. I'm just happy I got away without any major injuries. I should get a medal for this. Stop poking me, it hurts. What's with all the tough guy talk? You're still shaking like a leaf. I can't help it. You probably won't believe me if I told you what happened last night. Try me. You sure? Yep. I have to say, I wasn't expecting to see a monster with wings the size of a bus. Honestly, it didn't seem real until it was over. I bet it taught you a lesson. Consider yourself educated, even though the tuition fee was a bit steep. You know what? I think it's useful to learn something outside of my comfort zone every once in a while. So much for heartfelt honesty. One night with a big bat was all it took to scare you straight? Unfortunately, yes. If only I'd have made a decision a day earlier, I would have prevented a lot of misery and people from getting hurt. Not even a day, just a night earlier would have helped. I could have prevented the worst from happening, but it all turned into this mess instead. Whether right or wrong, I know everything we do gives our life meaning, but right now it just feels utterly helpless. Still struggling with that, Sorry. Okay, I'll admit I was a bit insensitive just now. You didn't have to. To what? Don't worry, I'm not a coward. I did what had to be done. Judging by how everything turned out, you were right all along. No worries or blame, okay? Okay, I don't think it was ever possible to come out of this as the clear winner, anyway. Neko, can you answer a question for me? How many times have you encountered something like that before? Not too often. I'm not really keen on remembering them. Really? I see. It sounds like something's bothering you. Yeah, you could say that. After 20 years, she's finally reunited with her family again. You seem to have gone through a lot yesterday. The worst possibility I could envision before last night was that someone forced the old lady to kill. I almost lost my life because of that mistake in judgment. It's written all over your face. To be honest, it was sheer luck that helped me survive yesterday. Mistakes were made, but at least that monster didn't have time to do even more damage than it already did. Instead, it gave up the chance to give me the finishing blow, grabbed the old lady by the shoulders, and began to fly as far away as it could, almost as if it were fleeing. Maybe it was just trying to escape with its food. From that perspective, it's easy to see why it picked her. You would have put up too much of a fight. Yeah, it made its choice. And failed? Yes, you could say that. You can imagine the result of a crash like that. It took the old lady with him, too. Was it really that high up? It wasn't just a normal descent, you know. The speed and velocity. It was like a rocket that messed up its launch direction. It didn't show the slightest intention of letting go of her, though. The old lady was really worried about its injuries, but I doubt the creature could understand those feelings. Have you ever witnessed something like that, Neko? I'm glad I haven't. You're making that thing sound too much like a person for my liking. I don't like it either. I have no idea what's going on through its mind, though they don't think and feel like us, do they, Neko? I have no idea. Those bandages are a good first step, but you should get that brain of yours looked at. You're talking about a monster that eats human flesh and sucks blood, and it's the reason you're injured right now. You are aware of that, right? Yes, but it didn't come here of its own accord. Nobody can control an animal's urges and instincts, but someone summoned it here intentionally. If the store manager's assumptions are correct, those people with the yellow claws are responsible for one family's decades of misfortune. Summoned and left abandoned by those lunatics, enduring 20 years of weakness, pain, and hunger. In a sense, it was much of a victim as everyone else in that family. Neko, if I was about to fall from the 7th floor, would you save me? Fools like you have 9 lives. You'd be fine. Be serious for a second. Well, if it isn't too much trouble, I'd lend you a hand, sure. But why? Because if someone you know is in danger, you can't just pretend not to notice. Thanks. Looks like you're a little more human than that monster at least. Oh, zip it. I'm getting tired of your nagging. The detective's serious expression softens somewhat at that, but he goes on anyway. I've been thinking about that since yesterday, and now I seem to have an answer. You, me, the store manager, we're all human, and as such there's a limit to our sense of justice. Our idea of justice comes from wanting to protect ourselves and our beliefs, such is our nature. I became who I am in order to punish evil and protect good, but at the end of the day, it's to protect what I perceive as common sense. To benefit others is good, to harm others is evil. It's that simple. I even parted ways with my old mentor who viewed things differently. Even so, he didn't deny me my ideal. I would do anything to defend it and protect us, like I did last night. In the end, it's just about practicing self-restraint as a human being. Yeah, even if you put it that way. Mrs. Huang gave everything she had to protect her son. She was an admirable mother, but it didn't do her any good. There's no way treating something like that as a family member could ever end well. Yes, it was a monster. So, even if she had kept going, it would never have ended the way she wanted it to. I just wanted justice for the dead. I didn't want to give up on the family. I wanted more than anything to find an outcome where no one would get hurt, but that's just wishful thinking. The world probably doesn't work that way. Even if everything she did came from the heart, sometimes the line between humans and inhuman beings becomes blurred, and one day a situation such as last night will happen, I guess. It's a tragedy in progress. There's no way to stop what's coming, only to see it through to the end and hope for the best. I can see why getting away from it all seemed like a smart idea to my mentor. Huh? He didn't want to see the tragedy play out. If you want to prevent a tragedy from happening, you need to end it before it even begins. That's what Neko took away from Justin's speech. This rather hopeless thought leaves her at a loss for words. I'm sorry about all the rambling and whining, and do me a favor and help me up, okay? Ouch, 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 ouch! I should have been smart and worn some thicker clothes yesterday. So, what's next? First off, let's report to the store manager. The aftermath of this whole thing is going to be tricky, and I really need some professional advice. That's not what I meant. You survived yesterday out of sheer luck. True. If you ever end up in a similar situation, you won't be able to protect yourself. That's right. You almost threw your life away just like that. And for all we know, there aren't much bigger things out there. And for all we know, there are much bigger things out there. That's harsh, but I guess it's true. And you're still not going to give up? I think you know the answer to that. Just not big of an idiot, are you? It took a lot of work for me and the store manager to get away from this kind of stuff. You know, the things that could potentially kill us. Even after pulling several all-nighters in a row, I still wake up from nightmares. Then an idiot like you turns up out of nowhere, nearly dies, and considers trying it a couple more times. God, you're like a dumb child who hit his head on a roller coaster and screams again right afterwards. You were at the scene earlier, weren't you? I don't think I'm better than anyone, and I don't claim to have made the best choices. I know there are people who have worked harder than I have been through more, and they haven't given up yet either. Join the team and you'll have to say goodbye to insurance companies once and for all. Yeah, I thought as much. So you too, huh? This is starting to feel like an actual job. We'll find a way to deal with anything. You'll regret it sooner or later. Then wait until that moment comes before you roast me. Fine, I give up. You can talk to the store manager yourself then. Neko tries to adjust Justin's slow pace as she helps him along. They still have a long way to go, and their conversation has given her a lot to think about. When you're feeling better, let's visit Mrs. Huang's grave. Where did that come from? There's something I'd like to give back to her. Is that so? Neko? You wish. Don't you think I'm a proper detective now? Who knows? She decides to ignore the question in the end. Some things are best left unanswered. This should have been a quiet night, but sometimes things just don't play out as expected. Truth be told, he doesn't even know why he's being chased or by whom, but something tells him the guy with the weapon in his hand running after him wouldn't exactly be interested in answering his questions. He ducks and dodges, sharply cutting corners in an attempt to shake his unrelenting pursuers. His pounding heartbeat all but drowns out their loud, profane screams and shouts. But why? What's the reason for this? He thinks hard, but can't recall getting into any trouble lately, at least nothing to the extent that justifies a grudge. He did his best to make peace with people in the neighborhood, even those he had issues with in the past. Settling old scores is important, but this is just another reminder that some things can't remain buried in the past. Life is a cruel mistress, always has been. The more you try to avoid trouble, the harder it will come looking for you. He tries to move towards more lively spots to seek shelter in the large crowds, but his pursuers are always one step ahead, subtly blocking his path whenever there's a potential opening. He fights and brawls among younger thugs in the street as nothing Fights and brawls amongst young thugs in the street are nothing usual, and bystanders tend to keep their distance so as not to get involved. He's seen situations like this play out before, only this time, he is the victim. The later it gets, the fewer people are out and about. The night is now a thick veil of darkness, and the pale moonlight is the only guiding thing in the boy's way. He runs into a remote park and hides in an overgrown bush. He's completely hidden in the shadow from a nearby streetlight. It's an unassuming spot, and nobody gives it a second look. The more often you get into trouble, the more important it becomes to always be prepared and have a backup plan. He can't even remember how often he's already used this spot in the past. He keeps his head low and tries his best to steady his breath. Few regular people ever visit this place, which has naturally made it a hotspot for morally questionable activities and characters. It has pretty much been abandoned. All that remains is the nasty smell. Crap, where'd that idiot go? I don't know, man. I don't know my way around this place. Damn it, that was so close. I almost had him. From what I've heard, he's a thug just like us. Fast pair of legs on that one. We can't let him escape on his home turf. Hard to tell where that is. This place has changed a lot from what I remember. Crap, this mining thing is a tougher gig than I thought. Can't we still change our minds, bro? This guy's a slippery one. I'm sure there are others we can catch more easily. We can't just change targets. There are eyes everywhere. If you'd been more careful in the past, there wouldn't be as many cops out and about. Oh, come on, that's way in the past. You know all that kicking and screaming just gets me hyped up. Their dialect sounds familiar. Young delinquents just like himself. They don't seem to know their way around this neighborhood. Well, what is this mining thing they're talking about? It sounds strangely familiar, but he can't place it. Where exactly has he heard that term before? We're all counting on this one to make some extra cash. No more mistakes. Yeah, whatever. The sound of footsteps is getting louder. Luck really isn't on his side tonight. There's no escape, nowhere to run. Clenching his fist, he readies himself to strike first. But someone else is faster. Who is it? Before he can even finish asking himself that question, a wave of fear sweeps over his whole body. Click, click. His hair stands on end. He starts sweating profusely and has a hard time breathing. Even though he can't make out exactly what he's looking at, it's enough to put his whole body in a state of shock. The voice is impossible to describe. It sounds like nothing he's ever heard before. The syllables sound harsh, like they're being squeezed from deep within the throat, accompanied by slow and heavy breathing. He can't understand a word that's being said, but it's clearly some kind of language instead of just random sounds. Fear of the unknown is putting him on edge. Huh? Who's there? Who's making that noise? Stop hiding and come out. Is that you, Lee? You recognize him? He doesn't look so good. No, Lee isn't. Ah! Wah! He doesn't even pay attention to the two thugs running away in a hurry. All he can think about is how he's hidden in the dark while that thing is out there in the open. Yet somehow he's the one who feels helpless and at a disadvantage. Click, click. His body trembles as fear and doubt eat away at his mind. He's still hiding in the bush, trying to make himself as small as possible. He's no longer in control. Fear has taken over and is paralyzing his body. A pair of eyes is staring at him. Huge, gloomy eyes filled with evil intent. He can feel their sinister gaze creeping and crawling all over his body. He can't even look away or close his eyes. Is hiding or trying to escape even worth it? Or should he just accept his fate? The feeling of revulsion is growing stronger by the second. By now, even the smallest speck of light has disappeared. The dark of the night is engulfing everything. Breathing rapidly, he suddenly feels a drop of liquid on his skin. Although he has just managed to get his breathing under control, his whole body tenses up again in an instant. It's too much for him. He can't even remember what the weather forecast predicted for tonight. Overcast with an occasional downpour of rain. Run, boy, run. Chapter 3. I can't believe it's already November. Well, what do you know? Time really flies by. A whole year of being stuck inside and not being able to tell the difference between night and day. Why do you make that sound as if there's something I should be worried about? Shouldn't you be? Maybe. I try not to think about it too much. It's almost winter. Even the afternoon sun feels drowsy during the time of the year. The perfect time for a nice warm cup of tea. Unfortunately, Scarlet has a tendency to chug everything as if it's water. She has long left her sense of appreciation for the little things in life behind. Maybe it's a bad idea anyway. Judging by her expression, she's been on a caffeine binge for an entire month, and giving her anything of the sort might well have the opposite effect. Half of your face is covered by dark circles under your eyes. I take it the case is still a mess. Correct. I haven't slept in my own bed even once in the last 2 weeks. So, there's no progress whatsoever? It's not quite that bad. If it were, I'd seriously have to rethink what to do with my time. The only people we caught were half dead at the scene. They were completely insane and kept chanting things over and over. It's hard to count them as witnesses if you can't get a single coherent sentence out of them. Strange things. Any details? There's no time left. We can't deny the inevitable. The usual stuff, you know. The guards who have to keep an eye on them are going crazy. It's not like their minds are completely gone. If you speak to them in a harsh enough tone, they'll listen. Whether their answer actually makes sense is another story. So it's not totally impossible to get some information out of them. That depends on how much sense you can make of what they're saying. He keeps saying that if they won't be freed and allowed to start over again, thunder will come crashing down on this city once more. They say that they are the only ones who can prevent that from happening. Their words, not mine. Thunder? Any idea what that could mean? No, I don't, but they seem almost scared, and they keep making it sound like a really big deal. I've asked the guards to dig deeper, but I haven't got a response yet. Every single time you ask one of them about it, they just cower and shake, claiming that they made the same mistake 20 years ago. That's very interesting. If the guy who came by the shop was saying the truth, the ritual's purpose was to escape from this world. And now their means of escape is gone. It seems like most of them would have preferred a quick end rather than prolonging what they perceive as pain. So they think their current situation is pure suffering? Have they said anything a little less cryptic about the consequences of it all? Sadly, no. They don't seem keen on learning from their mistakes. All we get is more unintelligible statements such as, the city will be the birthplace of fear, and fear itself is the end. Let's not write it off immediately. The police may not take them as seriously at all, but at least we've got something. And that's exactly why I just can't walk away from this. Your guy's called Justin, right? I really need to borrow him. I could use someone with his set of skills. He's in all kinds of trouble with his boss because of a series of murders still remains unsolved. Getting him could be very expensive. From what I know, he's even being held for questioning at the moment. That's not an issue. Just tell me how much. Amazing. This is no difference to you than buying a car, is it? Cut the crap. I know where this is going. So it's related to the accident? Yes and no. I struck a deal with my superiors that allows me to continue our investigation there. Anyway, I found out one more thing that we can add to the pile of stuff we should be worried about. Scarlet seems stern and serious. That's normal for her, but it's even more apparent right now. Justin should be able to work under difficult conditions, right? He's used to running errands for you, after all. I could really use him for this. Wait a second. You're not by any chance talking about that recent string of kidnappings? While we were busy trying to make sense of everything, Justin managed to uncover several kidnapping places, put the whole city on edge. I'm not sure about the specifics, but according to the rumors going around, people in the southern part of the city have been going missing. It's actually quite a tricky situation. The area is so vast that even if the police were to set up their night patrols, it would be impossible to protect such a large area completely. I don't know how much truth there is to all of it, but it's a hot topic of discussion on the forums I use. People are panicking. At least you seem to be paying attention to other channels than the TV. Scarlet raises her eyebrows. The main problem with this case has been delayed response. By the time the department got involved and started actively investigating, more than 20 people had already been reported missing, and that number is still rising. The city's just too big to always keep an eye on everything. Although Wuhang Road is somewhat quiet, it's still one of the busier areas of the city. The fact that I spent the whole of last year hiding in Hermitage without anyone noticing says a lot about the city's sparse police force. Most of the victims are beggars and vagabonds, poor people with no place to stay, but there are also a few reports of young men of good standing who were originally abducted. Trust me, you wouldn't believe how chaotic the situation is at the precinct. The police are in way over their heads. If the cases keep developing in this direction, sooner or later they'll be forced to hold a TV conference. Scarlet looks exhausted and frowns at the thought. I'll just have to take your word for it. Hey, wait a second. You said we're originally abducted. What does that mean? Many of them had turned up again. Scarlet slowly takes a sip of her warm coffee. Her words are more of a sigh than anything. Most of them were missing for more than 48 hours, but they were found in various parts of the city within a week, sometimes less. All of them conscious and without any injuries or missing organs. The big problem here is that none of them can remember what happened during the time they were missing. They have no recollection of it whatsoever. Since they turned up again, it would be impossible to keep a lid on the whole case. But a mole in the city hall must have leaked it to the press, and it ended up on the front page of the newspaper. She spreads the newspaper out in front of me, clearly annoyed. Collective amnesia in kidnap victims? What is the police keeping secret? These damn media people, they'll write anything to get attention, no matter how low they have to stoop. These are different from regular kidnappings. The fact that the victims show up again, unharmed, raises concerns about the perpetrator's true intentions. Sure, it's good news for the relatives and for the officials working on the case, but it raises many questions. We need to find out the reason for the collective amnesia. This is more than simple brainwashing, I'm sure of it. I put down the newspaper. It's easy to see how much this case is eating away at Scarlet. Those people who turned up again, are they showing any other symptoms? No, none whatsoever. They underwent full psychoanalysis and physical examinations. There are no abnormalities except for their missing memory. No signs of violence, no traces of drugs or other substances. That doesn't sound possible, does it? You think I'd be asking for your help if it did? No need to get all riled up. I'm just trying to help here. You just sit around in your comfy chair all day. Don't try to make yourself sound cool. Hey, it's not like I have any time for myself, okay? You don't know how much work it is to take care of a bookstore this big. Are you done crying? Please continue. Basically, Justin has experience working with you, which means he'll be more understanding and patient. Someone like him will be better suited to investigate this case than me. He'll obviously have to agree to this himself. He owes me a favor, but I won't make any decisions in his name or push him to do something he's not on board with. That being said, since you want his help, what's your opinion on the previous case? Sloppy work all over. The building seems irrelevant now, but I would still like for it to be inspected. 2 senior citizens dead, a group of people who are impossible to talk to. It's a mess. They're playing dumb, probably because they are well aware of the massive trouble they would have gotten themselves into. So the case remains largely unsolved. Justin can't be happy with that outcome. Scarlet has fallen silent and no longer seems in the mood to talk about the subject. I turn on the radio in an attempt to fight off the depressing atmosphere of the room for now. There's a harsh contrast between the happy sounds coming from the radio and the irksome silence in the room. In general, I relish the calm, but this is the wrong kind. I feel as if a strange force is pulling me towards every single weird and unusual event in the city. A sudden horrific thought hits me. What if it never ends? Ooh, a lot of time. Unfortunately, Scarlet's casework has come to an unexpected halt. It's a weird coincidence how, shortly after we discussed how Justin could help her, he's suddenly nowhere to be found. He's not picking up calls, and messages don't seem to get through to him. I asked Neko for help, but even she couldn't locate Justin's phone. He probably turned off his phone and cut himself off from the outside world completely. It's annoying, and even my patience has its limits, but at the same time I can't help but admire his stubborn decisiveness. This isn't the right moment to force him to do anything. I even had to stop Neko from using slightly less legal means of contacting him. I sent him a message explaining the current situation in hopes of getting through to him, and that's that. Scarlet had no interest in waiting for a reply. She borrowed a key and is probably asleep on the couch by now. She really deserves a break. At last, after all these discussions and intricate case details, I have Hermitage to myself again. I should learn to cherish these quiet moments more. Neko got up uncharacteristically early and left the store in a hurry. For a moment, Hermitage reminds me exactly of how it was just a month ago. I might as well make use of this rare opportunity to get some rest. I dim the lights and lean back. Mr. Store Manager? Hello, is anyone there? Cecile, what a rare sight. Over half a month, you finally remembered to come visit. I'm sorry, can I let him in first? It's dark, but in the dim light I can see Cecil isn't alone. Another student is standing, or is it Cecile? Oh. I forget there's an E in there. Cecile isn't alone. Another student is standing at the doorstep next to her. That definitely isn't Eloise. And just who might this young fellow be? His name is Zach. He's a classmate. No, a friend, but, well, also a classmate. What? Never mind. Come in, both of you. Don't just stand there. It's getting cold outside. I wave at the two of them, signaling them to enter. Relieved, she tugs at the boy's sleeve to get him to move inside, but he won't budge. Zach! Hey, Zach! Come on, move! With a sad expression on her face, Cecile keeps tugging at Zach's sleeve. Cecile, just to make sure, you're not still using lilac grass, are you? What the hell? Of course not. Eloise gave all that was left to you for safekeeping, didn't she? It's just that this young man right here looks awfully similar to how you two looked back then when you were under the influence. Huh? You're saying that this is what we're like? Well, that's what I think, at least. Cecile genuinely doesn't seem to know what's going on. I walk up to the door and get a better look at the boy, who still hasn't moved an inch. His frame isn't particularly broad, but he doesn't look frail or weak by any standard. It's easy to tell that he's muscular, even as he's standing there with a bent back and sloppy posture, the appearance of someone used to physical work. His fists look rough, with calloused knuckles being the obvious indicator that he's been in frequent fights. His fingers are covered in scars. He might have a good heart, but I never imagined Cecile hanging around with someone like him. It's Zach, right? Listen, buddy, why don't you step inside? Maybe have a warm cup of coffee? You look like you could use one. If you want people to stop and stare, feel free to keep standing outside, though I can't imagine that's what you want. Zach doesn't respond, but he obviously listened and understood. Little by little, step by step, he moves his legs and slowly enters the bookstore. Huh, so he's the quiet type. Mr. Store Manager, is he going to be all right? I can't promise anything yet. He looks far from all right at the moment. Where did you find him? At the school entrance. When I found him there, he looked even worse, as if he'd seen something horrible. He seemed completely out of it. My first thought was to bring him to you. I hope you know that I'm not a doctor, and this is a bookstore and not a clinic. Anyway, you made the right choice. I reckon other places wouldn't have been of much help. Let's step inside. Could you use the door? Could you close the door for me, please? Do I need to read anything? I mean, just in case. Learned my lesson that other time. Well, there was a surprise rereading of a book, even though the bookshelf didn't indicate anything new was there. Wait, what? A short book wrapped in craft paper. The author is unknown. It's barely being held together. There are reinforced staples on both sides to stop it from falling apart. And it has many dark spots. A lot of pages look ripped, and some were even replaced or rewritten by hand. This book has definitely been through a lot. The book contains a large number of symbols and obscure imagery. The author examines them and explains their meaning, pointing out the significance of these symbols in various religious ceremonies. The whole book divides these symbols into four eccentric categories: identity, physical objects, behavior, and purpose. The symbol doesn't appear in a category. In fact, the author assigns a meaning to each symbol according to its importance, and makes use of an odd logic to a categorization. For example, one symbol is categorized as servant, forest, blood, and communication. At the same time, the author interprets it as a servant of some group who is responsible for providing blood in the forced ritual of communication. After taking a careful look at the book, you can see a certain symbolic pattern that shows a great similarity to a famous family photo. The author classifies this pattern as parent, altar, guide, and open the way, and he speculates that it may have been used to mark the role of the parents as sacrifices in the ritual. Unfortunately, the author doesn't know much about the specific cultural group it is associated with, and isn't aware of the exact process and purpose of that ceremony. Interesting. I used that last time, though. I'm surprised it gave me a little sound, like there was something I needed to pay attention to. Don't have any new books. I thought we're still going to talk about Cthulhu. No reaction at all. That's bad. There must be something healthier to do than smoking. I stuffed a cigarette into the ashtray with a loud sigh. Zach still hasn't said a single word since he entered. He just sits there, completely motionless, with his empty eyes locked onto something that isn't actually there. Can't we just use the same method we used back then? That was different. Back then I knew you were under the influence of lilac grass, allowing me to treat you accordingly. In his case, we don't know what's wrong, making it hard to find the proper treatment. We can't just guess. So, do you know him well? Sort of. We were friends as juniors, but we really didn't keep in touch after we started high school. By the looks of his hands, he must have been in a lot of fights. He's known as a rowdy delinquent. He doesn't come to class very often, and if he does, he gets into fights with the teachers most of the time, and runs off again. I often see him wrapped in gauze and bandages. I see. So someone who doesn't shy away from a fight. It's not surprising that he got himself in some sort of trouble. You know where he usually hangs out? I'm not sure. We sat next to each other sometimes, but he never talked about himself. I've heard other people say that the gang he runs has a sort of hangout spot not too far from the school. Somewhere around, Nanshan Park, I think. Huh? Hearing the name of the park instantly puts Zack into a state of high alert. Huh? Zack, calm down. Is there something at Nanshan Park? He still doesn't utter a single word, but vigorously nods his head. I see. Must have been something truly awful to put you in such a state of shock. Zack continues to nod, but still can't seem to focus his eyes. Can you tell me what happened? I know you probably don't want to think about it, but it's important. There's not much Cecile can do to help at this point. Any further information will have to come from Zack himself. Trust me, there are ways we can help you. I can get to the bottom of this, but you'll have to work with me. You understand that, right? So, what did you see? I can't remember. Last night, when I left the internet cafe, they chased after me. I don't remember ever seeing them, but maybe they knew me from somewhere. I ran into Nanshan Park, trying to hide from them. I know good spots there. But then there was that voice. Zack looks strange and isn't making much sense anymore. Cecile and I exchange confused looks. Those footsteps. Click, click. Wet, heavy steps. The way it spoke was so strange. I couldn't understand. I never heard something like that before. It was so disgusting. Everything was so strange. I felt I was drowning. I couldn't breathe. I was drowning. And then Zack suddenly starts moving as if a wave of adrenaline swept over him. His eyes dart around the room nervously. His muscles tense and his fingers twitch as he starts to tremble. It's hard to tell what exactly he saw last night based on his incoherent description, but it must have left him absolutely terrified. Something has to be done to help him before he completely loses it. I try to calm him down, but he keeps shaking and I can't seem to get through to him. Zack, please, wake up. Don't do this to me. Zack, please, wake up. Don't do this to me. Cecile grabs Zack's arm, but it doesn't seem to have much of an effect. What can we do? He seems... How should I know? Anyway, let's try to calm him down and... Out of my way. I feel the impact of Scarlett's vicious slap just by watching it happen. Jeez! Cecile shrieks, but then she notices that Zack's eyes are focused again. He doesn't seem to know what's going on and touches his red cheek. What happened to me? Don't worry, you just dozed off for a moment. Scarlett's answer is swift and nonchalant. She makes it seem as if it was Cecile or me who just stormed into the store and slapped Zack in the face. I feel like crying and laughing at the same time, so I turn my attention to Cecile, who is still panicking a little. There's a fairly large green box in the bottom of the big cabinet upstairs. Could you do me a favor and fetch it for me? Cecile blinks, finally understanding that she can do something to help. She runs off, disappearing into the back of the store. A box? What's in it? Some goodies that you left behind. I cleared them away after Eloise spoke up. Whatever happens, it has nothing to do with me. Do you have a better idea? No, go ahead. Zack ignores her comment. He hasn't fully recovered from the shock and still looks shaken up. My head hurts. You still can't remember? I'm sorry, my mind's blank. Don't force yourself. Cecile is getting you some medicine. Don't worry about it. She knows how to use it, and if it's working, she probably won't answer. Let's see. She knows how to use it, and if it's working, she probably won't answer if you ask her about it, though. What? Trust me on this. If you don't get a good night's sleep tonight, you won't see the sun tomorrow. And if all you see is a bright white light, that's a whole other story. Zack frowns, obviously hesitant. It's understandable, since you don't just accept a gift from a stranger, especially if you have to swallow it. However, he seems more sensible than Cecile and Justin, and after a long sigh, he nods at me. If I want more information from the boy in front of me, letting him get a good night's sleep is the best approach. Although it won't make any progress today, acting on impulse will just cause trouble, and I need some time to prepare. Preparation is the key. It's getting late. You have a place to sleep tonight? Zack lifts his weary face in reaction to my abrupt question. I can go home. That's good. Come back tomorrow, then. Zack doesn't say anything and nods once more. Is this it, store manager? It looked like what you were asking for. Huh? You thought right. Go help him with it. Okay. Thank you for your help. She said thank you even though you didn't do anything at all. Cecile remembered her past self, but it's now her turn to help others. So, what's next? Do you think there's a connection? I lock eyes with Scarlet. As expected, she looks as serious as ever. Strange footsteps, unintelligible languages, some sort of scary presence, and a memory loss. God loves to play with us mortals who struggle in the dark. Do you know a priest who can help us exorcise evil spirits? Nothing good, but plenty of bad. Nothing good, but plenty of bad. Luck doesn't really seem to be on our side lately. Alright, why don't we stop it there? This is audapostrophe. You've been watching Hermitage Strange Case Files on Nintendo Switch. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.